all praise is due to Allah. On behalf of Minister Farrakhan, I want to thank each and every one of you for being out and participating. And I know that you are experiencing the fact that the more participation in the study there is, it produces a greater level of energy. And the energy then begins to feed off of itself and produces more energy, to the point where it becomes actually more nutritious than physical food to be here. This is actually better than eating dinner. And in truth, if possible, if you could skip eating on Fridays, you would even enjoy this session that much more. Because food is actually a sedative. And you know that once you've had dinner, you tend to relax, all your worries tend to dissipate. But of the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, blinded by pain, bitterness, and emotional reaction to God's will, they cannot and do not see him, his God, events, circumstances, or the persons involved in his domestic life properly, nor do they see the children who were born as a result of his domestic life properly. Then he continues, and this is where I hope your coordinators focus tonight. Brothers and sisters, when we do not learn the lessons of history, we then have to repeat it. Now stop right there. Why do we have to repeat it? Well, the minister does not speak to us in a vacuum. Because, as I mentioned to you last week, using the human body as a comparison, the minister brings us messages from Allah. Allah speaks to us through him. So everything he says is connected. Lingering pain is connected to failing exams and not learning lessons of history. Now, what makes a pain linger? Why does a person have a toothache today and still have the same toothache next week? Because they did not correct the problem. Places verse 43, so that we can cope with our own personal pain. This course is called what improvement? Right. Not brother across the hall improvement. Not sister sitting next to me improvement. Self-improvement is the basis for community development. How? Because we tend to project our own inadequacies onto others. Therefore, when we improve ourselves, we project our improvement onto others. If I'm a thief and a lowlife and a pervert, I project that. I think everybody else is a thief. See, if I'm stealing out of everybody's pocket and that's my hustle, then I'm assuming that everybody's got one. Because you cannot see above your own concept of your own potential. Until a man or woman sees him or herself as God, we can't see anybody else as God. So this is why it's essential that lingering pain be taken care of. Because if I'm sick, I'm going to assume everybody's sick. And I can't function among everybody if I don't think that way. You understand what I'm saying? Now listen at the Quranic verse. Because that's the answer to lingering pain. As for those who believe and do good. And then there's a dash, dash, dash. Like a pause. We impose not on any soul a duty beyond its scope. They are the owners of the garden. Therein they abide. As long as we believe and do good, and take care of the duty Allah imposes on us, then we will abide in the garden. The problem is we tend to take on duty that is beyond our scope. And then in trying to perform someone else's function, we create two problems in the organism. Number one, we crowd out the natural designated cell that the DNA assigned to that post. Secondly, we abandon our assigned posts. The whole purpose of self-improvement is to seek out and find God's will for us. And God didn't will anybody in this room to be some inferior, weak, meaningless entity. He did not create you on a bad day or put you together when he was not in a good mood. He gave as much thought to every one of us being created as he gave to Minister Farrakhan being created. And that's a lot of thought. Because as I've said to you before, he did not make Minister Farrakhan his conduit for his word in this hour and then surround the minister with generic beings. Because the minister has to have a certain type of force field in close proximity in time and place to himself in order to carry out his mission. And that's you and I. But as long as we don't perform our duty, and nobody knows your real duty but you. See, people can give you a function. You can get your assignments in the nation on the physical level. Go search this person. Go do this. But I'm talking about all of that is just preparation and really keeping you in check and holding you together so you don't fall apart while you seek out and find your divine mission. Now, we shall remove whatever of ill feeling is in their hearts. Rivers flow beneath them, and they say, all praise is due to Allah, who guided us to this, and we would not have found the way if Allah had not guided us. Now, as we were saying last week, Sister Ava Muhammad, according to the study guide that the minister's given us, was so tormented that an illness or disease that she had conquered at the onset of her husband's mission was aroused again by the emotions and took her life. So though Sister Ava Muhammad did, in the minister's belief, reconcile herself with that aspect of her husband's life, it did not save her physical life. So it's not enough for you and I to soldier and then one day keel over and drop dead from a heart attack or high blood pressure because we neglected our spiritual self, and then have us over in the mosque sucking mints and giving you a 15-minute funeral because we don't have no long service in the nation. And then we move on with the function. So there's no reward in Islam as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad through Minister Farrakhan for dying early. All right, you don't get rewarded for that. We don't speak well of you for that. In fact, people will wonder what you were doing wrong. So it pays to stay here as long as possible. Even if you believe there's another life elsewhere, why should Allah let you have some of it if you blow this one? So you have a duty as a Muslim to protect and sustain this life. That, if you say you love Minister Farrakhan, that is manifested in how much you love yourself. Because you can't love him or the brotherhood or the sisterhood more than you love yourself. It is not possible. Now, so if you've got ill feeling in the heart, and we all do from time to time, we got to let go of that. And we get rid of ill feeling by taking duty that is within our scope and not getting bent out of shape and sick to the stomach over somebody else's error. Now, disease, which is dis-ease, all right? And Allah says he desires what? Ease for you. So if you're in dis-ease, it's not from Allah. Now, dis-ease describes the condition. Illness describes the experience the diseased person has with the disease. It's called illness. I'm ill. I'm nauseated. I've got a fever. I've got a headache. I'm weak. I'm ill. But these are symptoms of a dis-ease. Now, even if the disease is lung cancer, which according to the cave dweller Caucasian, who doesn't know nothing to do for you but cut you up and poison you to death and call it a treatment program, ignorant as he can be, he's going to treat you and I. Leave him alone. Because down within the place where the disease or the dis-ease resides is the source of comfort that will turn that dis-ease into ease. And actually let the illness just flow right out of the body, in the urine, in the sweat glands, or whatever. That's why Jesus said, "Oh, ye of little faith, if you have a faith, the grain of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain." He's talking about tumors. You can melt it away with faith. And he speaks in here, the minister does, of faith in self producing an $80 million empire. And then when faith left and was dissolved, then there was nothing left. So you look around and one day the nation is all powerful, omnipotent, and the next day it disappeared. That's because the faith that supported it no longer existed. Because the people from which the faith emanated lost what? Themselves. We don't believe in a spook God, do we? So we know faith has a residence in a person. So when the people lost faith and righteousness that comes out of faith and virtue that comes out of faith, a building is nothing but a 3D projection of thinking. So when the thinking went astray, the buildings fell apart. When we moved back into this national center, there were weeds growing up through the floors of the school, which shows you a building is nothing but a brick. Now, lingering pain. You and I must learn how to stop torturing ourselves. All right? You must learn that you don't just eat. You know, the messenger said you are what you eat. Well, you don't just eat food. You also ingest experiences, emotional reactions. Just like you metabolize orange juice. You metabolize bread. You metabolize bean soup. Or whatever else we might eat. Everything we see, hear, smell, and touch ultimately becomes part of us. So if anything comes into our experience that we can't accept, it has the same effect as eating bad food. And when you eat bad food, what happens? What do you have to do? You have to either throw it up, or you get diarrhea, or you start sweating. But somehow, you got to get rid of it. But we don't treat emotional distress the same way. You see? We allow it to continue to reside within us, and it ultimately kills us. Now, people say nicotine is a carcinogen, and it is. They say this chemical and that chemical is a carcinogen, but you know what else is a carcinogen? Loneliness. Loneliness is a risk factor that could kill you just as quick as anything else. And this is why when the devil does studies on widows and widowers, people who lose a spouse, which they say is the most devastating thing, within 2 or 3 years after that, the person is either dead or has some serious affliction. All right? So don't dismiss your bad feelings. When you're depressed in your mind and you have a sad mind, you have a sad liver, sad pancreas, sad lungs, the whole body's down. And then it becomes what? Weak and susceptible to enemies, which come in the form of rebellious cells in the nation. See? If you allow yourself to be down and depressed, then an enemy can sneak up to you and talk to you. You see? And drop little things on you about the leader. Because that's what a cancer cell is. It's a rebellious cell that has decided it wants to have its own government. And it does not care that in the end, after it subsumes the whole organism, it's going to kill everything, including itself, that it doesn't care about that. And it's highly intelligent. Now, every cell in the body is a world and a being into itself. You think you're smarter than your kidneys, and you think you can psych them out. But you can't. Because if you send the wrong thing down there, they're going to pay you back. All right? And that's true of every part of your body. You can't break divine law. You can you're like a fugitive from justice when you read How to Eat to Live, and the message said, leave the pork alone, leave the shrimp alone, leave the peanuts alone, go home in your house and sneak out a bag of cashews. Nobody, your lieutenant, he don't see you. Fine, no problem. And you come back, wipe the salt off, put some Vaseline on your face. Fine, you think you got away with it. But when you drop dead at 45, then the law has caught up with you. You may have not done time out, but you are still going to get busted in a worse kind of way. You see? So don't play your body cheap, because your body is intelligent, highly intelligent and vindictive. It will punish you if you don't treat it right. And that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is warning us of in How to Eat to Live. We can look like we're 16, or we can look 60 at 16. It's all up to us. Now, let's take a nerve impulse for worry. That nerve impulse of worry, where you're concerned over what hasn't even occurred, you're really self-deluded. The Christians say worry is a sin. Because if you believe Allah is God, what are you worried about? If you get hit by a Mack truck, he's still God. I mean, when you really look at our belief in God, I mean, please, it's very conditional, isn't it? God's God until I have a rent notice and I don't have my money. Then I'm worried. Never mind, he had the power to bring me from a sperm to a full human being, but he can't help me get my rent money. And I won't bother to ask him in prayer. But when you have a nerve impulse for worry, it's going to show up in your stomach, maybe, as an ulcer. It might show up in your colon as a spasm. It might show up in your mind as an obsession. Because, mental illness that's even worse. And the messenger said, we are blind, deaf, and dumb. Now, worry transforms itself from organ to organ. But every part of the body knows that there is worrying going on. And every cell remembers it. Have you ever had something you were, think of something that you were worried about a long time ago that went away. Because somehow you got over it, right? I mean, think of something that 2 weeks ago just had you in what the minister calls panic city. I mean, you were at the penthouse in the Hyatt Regency in Panic City. Now today, you have survived whatever that thing was that had you petrified, right? But during that time, when you were worried, you may have forgotten for a minute. Like, let's say dinner time comes, you go to cook dinner, or the phone rings, and you actually say to yourself when you hang up the phone, there's something I'm disturbed about. I did have butterflies in my stomach, and they went away. Why did I have that? Now I'm relaxed and I shouldn't be, because I'm supposed to be upset. So you actually call it back. And then you say, oh yeah, it was about that nigga. Oh, now I know why I felt like now I'm happy because I'm killing myself again. I mean, we actually get upset with ourselves when we're not afflicted. But many are the afflictions of the righteous, right? Now, and so all at once, this feeling comes back, and it's everywhere. I mean, have you ever been just swimming in it? It surrounds you, this worry. That is because it's in the memory. Now listen at this. This is something I got from the devil. Because once the devil studies and goes through changes, why should you have to restudy it? Just go get it out of his book and then process it through the minister's teachings from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, this study guide. Because the study guide is, well, it is. It is the. But listen at this. Our essence is not physical. It's mental, and at its root is spiritual. Let's take the word rose. Rose. We all familiar with that word. And it brings up a picture in the mind of a flower, right? Now, according to the Caucasian scientists, our whole physical being changes every 11 months. You get a whole new physical body every 11 months. Fine, then why don't I just get boozed up, get high, eat some ham sandwiches, and then 11 months from now, I just have a new body, and why am I looking older? It's because it is our mindset and definition of what we are that defines the composition of our body. So we can impose decay on the flesh by how we perceive ourselves. Now, the word to prove that, think of the word rose now. The molecules that formed your brain the first day you ever heard that word or thought it aren't there anymore. They died. Let's say you were 4 years old when your mother said, that's a rose. 2 years old, that's a rose. Now, you don't have the same molecules you had when you were 2 years old. And yet, and you don't think rose every day, all day long. Rose, 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 in order to retain it in your memory. I'm just showing you the greatness of your brain. So in case you're so depressed and don't feel you have anything to be thankful for at all in life, just thank Allah for your brain. The brain is so powerful that with all the millions of thoughts you thought in between the last time you thought that word, the minute you wanted it, that word came up in your mind. Like sometimes you'll say, I'm looking for a word. And you say, oh, that's it. This means that the brain has stored that word for you, serving you. And then in a split second, you can call it up at will. Now, the molecule that word first came into isn't there anymore, but the concept is. My question is, where is it? I don't know. But thank God Minister Farrakhan knows. Go back to his Savior's Day message when he talked about intelligence. That there's intelligence in the sperm. There has to be, because intelligence is defined as knowing what to do and then doing it. That's an intelligent person. Forget about whether you got a Juris Doctorate or a medical degree as to whether or not you're intelligent. Do you know what to do, and are you doing it? If you are, you're intelligent. If you're not, you're unintelligent. All right? So intelligence is something we really can't locate anywhere. It's proof that God exists within man. That's the point. So you don't have to think the word all the time to retain it. That's power, isn't it? You can think literally millions of other thoughts without ever referring to that word, but when you want it back, there it is. So the point I'm making is this, beloved, that as the devil moves out on his little weak sheep, I didn't think he was going to come this cheap. I'm disappointed. No, seriously. I did not think he was coming with the drug thing, because we know better than that, I hope. But personally, I want you to be out Sunday, because I'm going to deal with that on Sunday. I also want to apprise you, if you have not been apprised, that a delegation from the Fruit of Islam visited the defender yesterday morning. And they had a very productive meeting, to say the least. But I'm saying this, that in dropping this propaganda seed about our leader, and it's very complex the way they did it, because Satan is a coward. So he's always going to place buffers between himself and the criminal act. But in dropping that seed, the Caucasian is more doing an act of testing the waters than anything else, because he knows this can't fly. So since he knows it can't fly, you've got to ask yourself, what was his motive in doing it? This isn't what he's actually going to come with. See, if he really was serious about coming with this, he would have come in a better way. So he's dropping this drug traffic thing to feel you and I out, to see what kind of neurotransmitters this brain has. So we're right in, rising above emotion, into the thinking of God, thinking 5 times before we speak. Don't get huffy, don't get bent out of shape. Think before you speak. And don't let anything disturb you, because you know what the devil's desire is to upset your emotional equilibrium so that you get physically ill. Many of those who followed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad developed illnesses and died. You know, they enjoyed such health just as we do. You notice there's very few funerals and death in the Nation of Islam. You know, when you go into Christian church, they have a sick and shut-in list that's about 4 pages long every Sunday. They have funerals with more regularity. It's like meals. The weekly funeral, the daily funeral. I mean, and when you get into Church of God and Christ and all that, I mean, it gets serious. It's an addiction. And what it is the death fills the atmosphere. And so people just follow one another into the grave. It's time for Brother Chickenfoot to go. You know, Sister Peanuts died last week, and we're so sorry, but y'all be at the funeral. And then what do we bring to the funeral in the Christian church? Baked ham, fried chicken, cornbread, greens. Let's go outside and smoke a cigarette. Let's go over to so-and-so's house and have a drink. And that's what keeps the embalmer in business. That's why all the embalmers lay up in the church with their business card. Hi. Because they know they're going to do a flourishing, lucrative business. So don't die on us, believers. Don't think little of yourself. Don't torture yourself. Don't feel threatened. You see changes going on. Nobody's being killed. People are being properly positioned. There's nobody in here that's not great, potentially. And don't start feeling insecure and scared and you think something's going to happen to you and this, that, and the other. All I warn you of is this. If you got something that you're doing, you know what I'm saying? That the devil can use, unload that thing. And you can do it. Just go on a fast. Go on a little 3-day fast and ask Allah to get that anchor away from you. And if you can't get that anchor off of you, I'm talking about criminal behavior now. If you can't get rid of that thing, you got to leave us. Because it's unnecessary, undesirable for your health that you stay around us. Nothing has been found errant in the minister's life, so now they're looking at us to see if they can find something to take him down. So the thing to do, but I'm telling you, beloved, whatever's wrong with you or anything you're doing wrong, it is not Allah's desire for this wicked, perverted, freakish beast to come and get you. And Allah will save you from it if you go to him in sincere prayer and ask him to relieve you of it. So may Allah bless us all with the light of understanding. And at this time, if Brother Shaheed would be willing to come up, if we have any announcements, we'd like to have those now, and then we will have closing prayer. And I pray that you will be out on Sunday for the lecture, Between Reason and Passion, which is if you've read the study guide, you know where it came from. And hopefully, inshallah, I'll be able to elaborate more on that. May Allah bless us with strength and love of self. Assalamu alaikum. Last week's tape comments that it has last week comments, April 26th and May 10th. Thank you. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant, and I greet my beloved brothers and sisters in the words of peace, in the language of our fathers of Assalamu alaikum. Did you enjoy tonight's discussion? Good. I want to thank the coordinators. I think you did a good job. And I know we stopped right in the midst of some very profound points. I want to open tonight's commentary by making an announcement and an introduction to a new era in the form of symbols that you see behind me. Behind me you see a portrait of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you also see a portrait of Sister Clara Muhammad. I met with Minister Farrakhan this afternoon very briefly, and he expressed to me his desire that the effort to walk in the shoes of Clara Muhammad, the wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, be sincerely attempted by all of us, both male and female. It is very important, it's in fact pivotal to our spiritual growth, that each and every one of us make every effort to attempt to understand the experiences of this woman, Clara Muhammad, who was taught directly by Master Farad Muhammad, and who was given instructions by Master Farad Muhammad that he never let him catch her at a weight other than her own. The desired weight for the Muslim woman on a sliding scale based on height, but generally what applies to us is a weight of 120 pounds. Sister Clara Muhammad maintained that weight, and when she left this earth in her 70s, she still had the figure of a young girl. This is an example to all of us who are MGT. Minister Farrakhan has asked, as a symbol of love and respect for our sister, that from this night forward, her portrait be in a place of honor alongside of her husband, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so we brought from the palace this portrait. And we thank Allah for Sister Clara Muhammad always. Now, brothers and sisters, tonight we talked about emotion, which is an intensified feeling. And when you go home and read tonight and refer to page 1 of the study guide, page 1 of the main body, you will see that Minister Farrakhan defines emotion as an intensified feeling. In response to a question that I asked him during the course of preparing this study guide, when I asked about love, he said to me, and it ultimately became part of the study, that he does not view love as an emotion, but as the mother of emotion. And he says, love is the creative force out of which all things come. And it can be broken down into 4 principles: freedom, justice, equality, and obedience to the will of God. Now I want to stop for a moment, and you can go home and read all that there is to be said And I heard the coordinators bring up some very excellent points, particularly Brother Bryant's circle. He has some very mind-stimulating questions, and that particular group of students had some mind-stimulating responses. But I want to make reference to the definition of emotion as an intensified feeling, because the question has to be answered, what is feeling? Feeling, to give the dictionary definition, and that only probes the surface of it, is a sensation. To feel is to be able to perceive something by the sense of touch. To examine something by touching. But I want to add to the dictionary definition the idea that the brain, which is the seat of emotion, is not limited to the physical body for the purpose of sensation. For example, even though our two eyes see things, our eyes are only one of the instruments by which the brain sees. The brain also sees on a much deeper level than the two eyes that it uses as a camera are able to record. And this is why you hear in the devil's world, they say the phenomenon they call love at first sight. Well, sight is not limited to what the eyes perceive. This is why upon the first meeting with an individual, you hear people say, I did not like that person. I don't know why, but I just didn't like them. The thrust of the mission of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as it is being executed through Minister Farrakhan in this final phase, is to help us overcome the electrical and chemical hostility that we feel for one another. When Allah created himself in triple darkness, he started as a single atom. Is that correct? Well, he was not the only atom in the darkness. There were trillions, maybe quadrillions of other atoms that had a source of life in them. But it was this one atom that came forth and said, I want to be ahead of all the other atoms. Now, the fact that that atom made that decision does not mean that all the other atoms were in accord with that decision. In fact, some of them resisted his decision. This means that when Allah himself made a decision to create, he automatically had an adversary. And to this day, the adversaries that existed in triple darkness still have not been made to fully submit to his will. Where are those atoms today? They are walking around in you and I. And the ultimate manifestation of those resistant atoms are found in what we call white people, the Caucasian. They represent the complete manifestation of rebelliousness to the will of the original creator. And so he says in the Quran, to the righteous, when I raise you up, I raise up an enemy for you. So don't get upset when you set out to do a good deed that it seems like there's always an adversary, always an impediment. And the impediment manifests in a person. So whatever you set about to do of good, expect to have opposition. If you do nothing more than just look good, nothing more than that, just trying to follow the minister trying to be a Muslim. Somebody doesn't like it. And they're not elsewhere. They're right there with you. Why? Because Allah himself has had to contend with that resistant impulse from the very moment he made a decision to be. Why do you think it took him 6 trillion years to come into existence? Don't you think if all the other atoms were cooperative, maybe it wouldn't have taken so long? But there's always an adversary. So don't you get discouraged when you run into opposition. If you are serious about becoming God, you should expect opposition. And if you don't have any opposition and life is a bowl of cherries for you, you're not doing anything. But if you're suffering and if you're going through changes to the point where you feel you need to fall down and pray and you need to fast, then thank Allah. Because Allah's the one that gave you the enemy. He's just letting you share some of what he goes through from moment to moment. So a feeling is a sensation. And some of us chemically are not in harmony with each other. And the struggle to overcome our chemical contrariness is part of what will create a kingdom of God for us. See, it's easy to like people that you have a natural affinity for. And before we came into Islam, that's who we, quote, hung out with. We hung out with the people that we had an affinity with. If we were a cokehead, we sought out other cokeheads. And that's who we spent the evening with. If we like to drink, if we like to party, if we like to read, if we like to eat, we find people that like to do the same thing. We usually choose someone of the same age group, same economic level, everything similar. Why? So that we can relax and be comfortable. If you look around you in the nation of Islam, most of the people that you're forced to work with and deal with, if you were out in the world, you wouldn't even stop and speak to those people. So it's a challenge, isn't it? Because Islam throws away age, throws away sex, throws away economics, throws away education, throws away everything that is dear to us that the devil taught us is important, and says those things don't matter. What we do have in common with one another is an affinity for God. Deep, deep down inside of all of us. And that's the bond. That's what Minister Farrakhan is appealing to. So a feeling is a sensation. It is examination by touching. It is being conscious of being. When you say I feel, that means you're aware that you're alive. And this is why when Master Farad Muhammad came, we are told that he found us what? Dead. It means that black people were unaware that we were even alive. Now in the 96th surah, and you should read this tonight, read Surah 96, the first 5 verses. These constitute the first revelation to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah. The Quran was not revealed in the order that you read it in. But it says in that, and that surah is entitled Al-Atlaq, which means the clot. Now, in Arabic, the word for clot means attachment. And it also forms the base of the meaning of the word love. This testifies to Minister Farrakhan's view that love is greater than emotion. In fact, when the Christians say God is love, they're not wrong. But in order for God to be loved, then love has to be God. And if love is to be God, then it's got to be greater than what we on this level call love. I'm turned on by it. I'm in love. I love pizza. Well, you have an intense feeling for pizza. You see? That's a component of love, but love is bigger than that. Love is the creative force. So, in the hadith, Prophet Muhammad attributes this statement to Allah. Allah says, I loved that I should be known, so I created man. What did Allah love? That he should be known. See, in God's eyes, love is knowing him. And knowing him, being aware of him, automatically produces an attachment or an affinity to him. Because we were created out of a natural command to do his will. And so to know him is to love him. And to love him is to be placed in direct contact with the creative energy that moves this universe. So here's the pyramids sitting over in Egypt. The white people are walking around like this. Because for all of their technology, they can't fathom how those pyramids were built. Here's a stone construction consisting of pieces of limestone that were brought from a quarry 600 miles away at a time when there was no transportation as we know it today. How were these stones weighing 2.5 tons each carried from where they were to where they are? And placed together with such precision that the bricks have no mortar between them. And yet they are fitted together with such precision, you can't even slide a razor blade between them. That's what you call being tight. So the same creative force that was backing the black men and women that built the pyramids, and they built it when they were on the downslide of their knowledge. We built the pyramids when we were forgetting things. And yet white people can't fathom how it was done. They want to pretend in the movie 10 Commandments that slaves drugged the bricks. They just drug them. This is cartoon, this is cartoon world. It didn't happen. Do you know it gets 110 degrees out in that desert? There's no such thing as some brothers. First of all, can you imagine which brothers did the dragging? The black man is God. So creation is made to submit to him. I can't fathom the original scientists saying we can't figure out a way to move these bricks, so let's just go out and drag them through the desert, 600 miles, to the tune of 2.5 million tons. No, it didn't happen. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in the Theology of Time that a system of hydraulics was used to build the pyramids, but that he could not reveal it publicly. And Master Farad Muhammad would not have it revealed publicly because he said black people would sit right there and ignore it. But white people would listen. And they would write it down. And the same knowledge that enabled our people to build those pyramids is so profound that it would actually extend the rule of the white man. And so since it could not be made known to the white man and we could not be trusted to A, listen to it, B, understand it, C, accept it and follow it, but they would, it's still a secret. But there is and hydraulic means what? What's inherent in that? Water. And doesn't the Quran say Allah created every living thing from water, including himself? So with that, I ask that we study this very carefully. Minister Farrakhan has stressed to us that it is pivotal. When I say it, I mean Study Guide 18. Is pivotal to our survival. Because even if the facts that rise up to attempt to destroy us are different from the facts that we see in the study guide, the underlying principle is the same. So even now, if you feel a sense of tension and you feel on certain days that you just can't take this anymore, and sometimes you do have to withdraw yourself a little bit. You have to feel yourself and know. That's why he says, know yourself. Don't just know yourself knowing your social security number, but understand your nerve pathways so that you can have a scientific approach to what you can tolerate. You have to know when it's necessary to fast, when it's necessary to eat, when it's necessary to be present, when it's necessary to stay away. You're walking on a very delicate balance here. And there are forces on either side always poised to step in when you take a dive. Because death comes when? In the absence of life. As long as life is present, death cannot be. But it lays alongside looking for an avenue to come in. So remember, beloved, know yourself, study yourself on the subconscious level. And remember, when a feeling becomes intensified, it's called what? An emotion. And when an emotion becomes violent, it's a passion. Passion has a place. Listen, violence has a place now. You can't produce a son without violence. But violence or violent emotion, which is passion, has to be directed by reason. And remember what he says. He who directs or he who supplies the reason directs the passion. So you and I are filled with passion, but the passion needs direction. And if we're going to live a better life, that direction has to be such that we all see it from one single mind. So may Allah bless us to come together and to overcome the electrical and chemical impulses that keep us apart, that resist our unity, that were there from the beginning of time. And at this time, I'm going to ask, is Brother Maurice in the? Yes. I'm going to ask Brother Maurice to come up and close us out with a few announcements. Thank you for coming out, brothers and sisters, on this Friday night. Assalamu alaikum.